A cold March wind blows as the great blue herons rest. They have just returned from southern wintering areas to this Ohio heronry. It is the same one they used last year, and the same one generations used before them. The last of winter's snow is melting. Each day, a few more arrive to make up this large Lake Erie nesting colony of about 1,000 pairs. Males arrive ahead of females. Rivals squabble over nesting sites. Females select mates for the season. Largest heron in North America, the Great Blue stands about 4 feet tall. The male heron defends the territory, a small area in the heronry, including a nest. Landing in another's territory brings a noisy warning. Displays and threats. It is difficult to decide who won or if there was room enough for both. It takes a couple of weeks for all the herons to return, establish a territory, and select a mate. Some are just arriving, while others are already repairing a nest. Earliest arrivals choose the more desirable nest sites. Later migrants must use less stable nests or build new ones. Some will have to use smaller trees at the edge of the colony. Nests clustered close to the trunk of the tree are safer from wind and storm damage. Neighboring birds tolerate one another from small territories. When repairing an old nest, the female commonly sits there while the male brings new materials. These offerings also strengthen pair bonds. There are a variety of courtship behaviors. Displaying and calling help pairs form their seasonal partnership. Nests from previous seasons are remodeled and added to each year. Nests that are used for several seasons may become as large as 4 feet across. During the building phase, the nest also serves as a stage for courtship and mating. Through the egg-laying period, mating occurs several times to ensure that the eggs will be fertile and produce young. By late April, all the herons have returned, and the large nesting colony, the heronry, is a center of activity. Eggs have been laid in many of the nests. Herons may lay 3 to 7 eggs, but 4 is typical. They are laid during a period of 6 to 12 days. For about 28 days, the heron must keep the eggs warm as the embryos form and grow. Nesting is in various stages at the heronry. Some pairs have not even laid eggs yet. Once incubation starts, they turn the eggs regularly. Turning helps the embryo develop properly. It is difficult to distinguish male from female blue herons. The male is usually slightly larger. Both male and female take turns incubating. A periodic nest exchange allows the relieved mate to go feed and exercise. Incubation must be nearly continuous day and night through all kinds of weather. Chilling could kill the embryo in the egg. To observe the birds and film this story, we had to build a blind in the midst of the heronry. The nests were in trees 50 to 80 feet in the air, so our blind was placed on a high scaffold. At 60 feet, we found a vantage point with several nests and lots of activity. We made many trips to the blind over a period of 5 months, from early March until late July. Our visits were spaced to see all stages of the heron's growth, but to cause as little disturbance as possible to the herons. We saw many animals around the heronry: a migrating tree sparrow, other birds lived in the colony, a starling and a house sparrow. The house sparrow nested under a heron's nest. A keen sense of hearing makes this bird aware of some rustling noise far below the nest. It's a woodchuck. He sniffs the air, maybe testing for the delicate odor of a favorite plant to eat. The young ferns, called fiddleheads, make tender morsels. There are other signs of the season: spring beauties and trillium. The trees are leafing out. The leaves will provide shade from the hot summer sun. Hatching is underway. 3 gray downy chicks and 1 egg to go. The chicks poke and peck at one another, a rivalry that occurs more often when the nestlings are hungry. The parent goes fishing, swallows its catch, and returns to the nest, where it regurgitates the partially digested fish to feed the young. Another feeding nearby. The young here are older and quickly gobble up the small fish. As with many newly hatched birds, heron chicks take several days to develop the ability to regulate their temperature. The adult broods or covers them, either warming them on chilly days or shading them from the sun's intense heat. On warm days, the parents let the young rest alone in the sun for short periods. Less than 10 days old, this chick is already caring for its newly appearing feathers. One parent or the other usually stays near the nest until the chicks are about 3 weeks old. These 2-week-old chicks actively move around the nest to get exercise. The new feathers growing on the wings and head give us a clue to their age. It will still take several months before these gangly young grow into graceful adults. In a nearby group of trees, a different heron is guarding its nesting territory too. The green-backed heron is one of the smallest herons. Its size, color, and shape make it easy to identify. It nests alone, a different behavior from the great blue's colonial nesting habits. Though common, it is not as widely distributed as the great blue heron. The location of a heronry is probably determined primarily by nearness to a good fishing area to ensure enough food for the young. With over 2,000 adults plus young, this heronry in Ohio must have a very large fishing area like the wetlands around Lake Erie. Right after the young leave the nest, all the herons disperse to other areas where adequate food is available. But until then, these waters adjacent to the heronry supply a variety of fish, amphibians, and other animals which make up most of their diet. Sometimes they defend fishing territories, as this one is doing. If the display bluff doesn't work, a fight results. Neither was injured, but one chases the other in a definite show of dominance. While some dispute territory, others are at the serious business of catching fish for themselves and their nestlings. This one is ready to return to its nest. One parent has already fed, but the young beg for more, and the other parent is on its way. The adults are not concerned with feeding each chick. It is a matter of each fighting for its own food. Larger, more aggressive nestlings often get more fish. Young demand food by grabbing and pulling on the parent's bill. This stimulates the parent to regurgitate the fish from its crop. Sometimes food doesn't come as fast as the young would like. Perhaps that big fish was harder to get back up. The young gobble up the small fish, but only pick at the large one. Still hungry, these two continue the begging behavior on each other. Finally, the adult takes the big fish back for itself. Nearby, it is also feeding time. It is easy to understand how such a large colony needs a huge fishing area to support it. Momentarily satisfied, these nestlings settle back to doze in the warm sun. The daily routine in the heronry is well established. Now the young only need lots of fish to eat and time to grow until they can leave the nest at about 8 weeks of age. In some nesting colonies, the great blue herons nest with other species, such as the great egret. Egrets are also members of the heron family and are known for their beautiful plumes. At one time, they were hunted to near extinction for their plume feathers, which were used as decorations on hats. Another member of the heron family also nests in this colony, the black-crowned night heron. As its name implies, it usually hunts for food at night, flying out to stalk frogs, crayfish, and fish. Back at the Lake Erie heronry, we notice that some of the trees are whitewashed with droppings from the nests. If there are several nests in one tree, the large amount of droppings can kill it, a common cause of many of the dead trees in heronries. At 6 weeks old, nearly grown young look more like the adults. The large young crowd the nest platform, and the adults often rest nearby. Left alone, the young work over their feathers, grooming, cleaning, and repairing. Called preening, it is a habit birds continue all their lives. Juveniles pester for food whenever the adult is around. After the young are 4 weeks old, the adults usually escape the pestering by returning only at feeding time. The hungry young finally stimulated the parent to feed. Now there is a tug of war over one large fish. Who will get the prize is anyone's guess. By July, the temperatures may get very high. It is especially hot for the herons on nests in dead trees. The herons cool themselves by rapid motion of their throat, similar to panting. It is called gular flutter. Wing flapping is a common behavior for nestlings this size. It's practice for coming flight. The exercises, which become more frequent as herons approach the time to leave the nest, strengthen their muscles and develop coordination. When they make their first flight, all muscles must be strong enough to propel them through the air. They don't all fly at the same time. Perhaps seeing one fly stimulates others to try it. Up and away. It works, but not always. Some get tangled in trees and may die there. This one struggles and recovers its upright pose. Not all are so lucky. And a few land on the ground on their first flight. This often means disaster. Parents do not feed them there. If the young does not have enough strength to take off again, it may not survive. The biologist is studying herons and checks this one for general health. It is very thin. The eye is still bright and alert. Its reflexes are still good too. Perhaps it will find some fallen timber to climb up on and fly away. The biologist will let nature take its course. Not all herons nest in trees. In some areas of western North America, where trees are not so common, they nest in the marsh vegetation. These short salt cedar trees in the Texas Gulf area make a different nesting habitat. Here, the neighbors are the colorful and rare roseate spoonbills. The bright pink and crimson spoonbill is found around the Gulf of Mexico from Florida to Texas. Threatened or destroyed habitats make nesting areas scarce for spoonbills and herons. In southern wintering areas, great blue herons may be found in the company of great egrets. But these birds, so highly colonial in their nesting areas, are usually loners the rest of the year. They stalk the low tide areas searching for small fish, crabs, and other prey. The great blue heron has the largest range of all the herons and is the heron people most commonly see. In the wintering grounds around the Gulf of Mexico, they fish the same waters as several other herons. The yellow-crowned night heron stays year-round in the south and up the Atlantic coast. The great white heron is a resident of the Florida mangroves. Once thought to be a separate species, the great white heron is just a color phase of the great blue. The little blue heron is usually a southern nester, but wanders north to Canada after the nesting season. The tri-colored heron fishes open water, but can often be found stalking fish from the mangrove trees. Primarily a southern resident, it lives from California to the East Coast. The great blue heron, incorrectly called a blue crane, stalks its fish alone in the rolling ocean surf. But spring will find it winging northward, and once more becoming a colonial dweller in its traditional heronry. As long as the heron has undisturbed nesting areas and good fishing areas, uncontaminated by pesticides or acid rain, it will continue to be a common sight in our natural heritage.